sticking with the campaigns, we saw some of the utterances that were made, and want to listen to Bonnie Halwale, who spoke at one of the campaigns. This is some of the things we had repeatedly been said on the campaign trail. Let's take a listen.
Pige kura asubuhi on Thursday, ukitaka upigie Moses Kajwang. Na kama wewe umpendi Kajwang for whatever reason, basi mwingine Moses Kajwang kura, lakini hiyo kura yenye umemnyima ile yenye umemnyima Kajwang, hiyo kura usipigie mtu mwingine, pigia ODM.
So, with what Halwale is saying there, and a number of other, politicians, as they were campaigning for you, did come out to say, even if you don't like Moses Kajwang, even if you know he's not your preferred candidate, vote for ODM, vote for Raila. And many analysts have then come out to say, you won by about 80,000 votes. That's huge.
100,000.
Oh, 100,000.
Yes.
Thank you for the clarification. So that's a huge margin. But analysts have said that was not by your own merit. It's not by virtue of what Moses Kajwang brings to the table. It is because of those kind of pleas from your other politicians that the vote was for ODM, the vote was for Raila. As we saw him, he was very keen on ensuring that you were re-elected in terms, you were elected rather, in terms of the campaigns and making sure he was there on the ground. What do you say to those who say that it was not Moses Kajwang people voted for?
Well, it's correct. I did not run as an independent candidate. If I wanted to go on my own merit, I would have run as an independent candidate. The law allows that. And there were about 3, 4, 5 people who ran as independent candidates. I ran as a candidate of a political party called ODM and a coalition called COD, with a leadership led by Raila Amolo Odinga, Kalonzo Musyoka, and Moses Wetangula. My assessment was a total assessment of all these ingredients that I was bringing to the table. So for those people who are making a decision on Moses Kajwang, they were making it on the basis that he was an ODM candidate, a COD coalition member, and someone aligned to some of these leaders. And I think that is a fair and a perfectly legitimate basis for people to make a decision.
Yeah.
If you're going to make a decision on Moses Kajwang as an individual, that is only when he's running as an independent candidate. And look at the role of a senator. I can tell you that no one can be elected as a senator or a governor on his own personal manifesto or ideology or basis, because it is far-reaching and cross-cutting. Look at a county like Homabay. We've got 8 constituencies. We've got 40 wards. We've got 350,000 voters and close to 1 million residents. If I go in as an individual, then what is it that I'm able to do without the synergies and the foundation that a political party provides you with?
Okay.
And so every other candidate, be it a presidential candidate, I think we must assess them on the basis of the total ingredients that it brings to the table.
So let me ask you this. Many of those of your competitors were initially in ODM, decamped, of course, after you got the direct nomination. And the argument many made, because remember at the burial funeral service, Raila had said that it was not automatic that a family member would get the ticket. Yes. So many were hopeful that it would be open, but you ended up getting the ticket at the end. So many argued that they felt they'd been with ODM longer, they'd done more for the party in terms of their loyalties, even to Raila himself, and asked what is it Moses has done, what is it that he brings to the table that gets him that ticket, and not Okundi would argue, not him, not Jaka Kimba, not the others. What do you say gave you that upper hand compared to the other candidates who are in ODM?
The problem is where people believe they've been in the party for too long, and so they need to be rewarded. If you are to use the same argument, we'll also argue that since we are part of the family that lost a son, we also ought to be rewarded. When the Prime Minister made those comments at the funeral, and I was present, and I listened to them very carefully, and I agreed with his comments, what he meant was that we were not, or the party was not going to dish out nomination to someone who does not deserve, simply because he's a member of the family, simply because he has been financing the party, or simply because he has been in the party for too long. The party was going to give nomination to somebody who deserves it. And
why
ODM,
did you deserve it?
ODM and the COD coalition is not in the business of supporting losers. Any political party is not going to tie a rope around its neck to hang itself. When a party makes a decision on a position as significant as this, you must look at several attributes. First of all, what does this individual bring to the table in terms of past experience, current capability, and future potential? You also have to look at who the voters are. And in Homabay, the voters are women and youth, and who is able to appeal to that demographic. I believe that the party did its due diligence. Remember, when the Elections Board announced my nomination, they indicated that there were interviews that had been done. They indicated that there was a survey which placed me ahead of the pack. And when you look at the results...
And is that survey that many have questioned, what exactly was it that this survey revealed? What is it that put you above, an edge above all these other candidates? What exactly would you put your finger and say this and this and this?
Well, I would not really go into the methodology that the Elections Board used, because I was just like the other candidates. We were all told that the Elections Board used a particular approach.
So you don't know why you deserved this nomination?
No. I think that...
Or you don't know why you got it?
That question cannot be linked to what the Elections Board did.
Okay.
I believe that I was a good candidate because, one, I am youthful and I'm able to appeal to the youthful mass. But number two, which is also very important, we were tested on our understanding of the Constitution and on our understanding of the role of the senator. And I think I demonstrated a fairly good understanding. Then there was the issue of future potential. And I offered the kind of promise that ODM and CORD coalition was looking forward to. Because ODM is not just about the last two elections or the next election.
Okay.
ODM is looking at the future. And it is looking to capture young intellectuals who will be able to carry that aspiration into the future.
To the person who argues you simply got it because you are family, you say yes or no?
Absolutely not.
All right.
If you are, yes, I am family and I got it. But that was not the distinguishing factor. The key thing was that I deserved it. And then secondly, I happened to come from the family. You happened to come from the family.
There are those in ODM who did not support your candidature. They either chose not to campaign and some openly opposed it. What do you think about that?
I would say that they made a wrong decision, because on 12th of February, the people confirmed that they had confidence in me as their senator. And in politics, we are all entitled to our views. We have completed the elections. The people have confirmed. I now want them to, just let us join hands and work together. The key thing about Homabay County is reconciliation and healing. Every other day you open the newspapers, you find we are fighting over party positions, we are fighting over elections. We are probably over democratic, if I might use that word, because we would argue and slug it out for any other position or any other issue that comes up. That distracts us from focusing on the critical things. And I keep telling the story of the parable of talents that is found in the book of Matthew. The parable of talents, there's this rich man who went on a journey and left his servants with talents, each according to his ability. When he came back, two of the servants had multiplied their talents. One servant had buried his talent and gave it back to the master. I keep warning my people that if we over-politicize issues, if we spend all our time analyzing newspaper headlines and analyzing the decisions that people made in the past, when the good Lord comes back, he'll find that we buried our talent and we have not multiplied it.
But hasn't part of the ODM leadership, if not all, come out to say that those who do not support your candidature should be disciplined?
The Political Parties Act is very clear on discipline within political parties. And those who are talking about it are making reference to the Political Parties Act. That is the law. And, well, they say the law is an ass. Sometimes it has provisions that make life very uncomfortable. If it was me, I would ignore them. But you see, a political party is also like a religion. You cannot profess to love the Catholic faith when you spend all your days insulting the Pope and his archbishops and bishops and priests. It gets to a point where you have to make a decision whether you want to be a Catholic or a Legio Maria or an Adventist or an Anglican. You cannot stick in there and continue insulting people, continue messing things from inside, and then refuse to get out. And I made some comments at a public gathering we had over the weekend, that we've got several options. And these options must start by talking to each other. if talking to each other fails, you know, we bring other parties to attempt to mediate us. But if all this fails, then we invoke the provisions of the Political Parties Act.
Yeah.
For me, the provisions of the Political Parties Act should be the last resort rather than the first.
Rather than the first. You know, usually elections, many a times we see the candidate vote for themselves, usually quite the moment to capture in the entire election day for various positions. You didn't vote for yourself. Are you not a registered voter there?
I'm not a registered voter in Homabay County. If I would have voted for myself, then we would have won by 100,001 votes.
So where are you registered?
I'm a registered voter in Raraka. The background to this, this is part of the reasons why we believe that the IBC needs to be completely overhauled. If you do recall the voter registration process prior to the last election, it was extremely shambolic, and it locked out so many people who had ID cards and who are not able to fit within the 30-day period that they provided for voter registration. If you recall, if you voted in prior elections, which I doubt.
Why would you doubt that? Okay.
The time, we were given 30 days to acquire new voters cards. And we are all talking biometric. You know, part of the digital migration and part of the uninformed digital discourse that we've been having in this country. We all said we are going biometric. This is the best thing that has happened since sliced bread, and we are given 30 days to take fresh voters cards. I was in Nairobi. I was working in Nairobi. It was at a time when I was busy and I could not go back to Homabay to get a voters card. So I took a voters card in Ruaraka, and that is why I did not vote in the by-election in Homabay. In the
by-election. Remember also during that particular time, a number of your supporters came out to say that there was plans to rig the elections. So would you say it was rigged then in your favor? That you won.
The fact that I won does not absolve the IBC from blame. Look at a number of things that happened. When I filed a legitimate complaint against electoral violence, which was captured on TV and which happened in the full glare of the governor and county security officials, they dismissed my petition on grounds of lack of evidence. We knew that there were efforts to influence the hiring of presiding officers and clerks, and if we had not made noise...
You knew, did you have the evidence?
Yes, we had the evidence. We had evidence of secret meetings at night involving IBC officials and candidates.
So did you have what, recordings, photographs? What kind of evidence did you have?
We have photos, and we've got audio recordings, and we've got testimonies from some of the people who are trying to be dragged into this plot. IBC was not as sacrosanct as they would want us to be. The fact that we won is not because IBC voted for us. It is because the people voted for us. It is the people who are affirmed beyond any doubt and beyond any rigging mechanisms. If it was a close tie, we probably would have ended up with the kind of situation that we've ended up with in the last two presidential elections. Something must be done to the IBC so that it is beyond reproach. The IBC should be like Caesar's wife.
Completely beyond and above reproach. But then many, and as also the principal in court, even the other day wrote an article about IEBC and talking about it exactly the same thing you're saying, needing that overhaul. What then must happen? Because time is running out. 2017 is fast approaching. The time out is November of the same year. What do you see being the way to go from here to ensure that you get your way?
We must take some very drastic measures on the IBC. If you look at the end of their tenure, it comes at a very critical moment for the next elections. If you are to go for a runoff, which is quite likely, we will really not have a commission to oversee that runoff. Then you've got an IBC whose tenure ends on the same day, all of them. I would propose that on a particular day, we terminate the contract of the IBC and pay them for the remainder of their tenure and initiate the process of putting in place a fresh commission that will be balanced, that will have the input of political parties and Kenyans, that will contain men and women who are above reproach and men and women who have little appetite for chicken, so that we have a body that can take care of the next elections, the main elections, be it a runoff, for a period of time. The current IBC is going to be the biggest crisis for this country, and I'm afraid that the kind of violence we witnessed in 2008, if the IBC missteps again, which is quite inevitable because of the end of their tenure, We are going to lead this country down a negative spiral.
Okay. Back to Homabay politics. Jaka Kimba dropped out of the race, citing threats on against his life, that some people want him dead. What did you think about that?
Well, if it's true, then I sympathize with him. He then should enhance his security detail. But I didn't think that the threats on candidates' lives were that significant. Otherwise, even for me, I would have bolted. But I also believe that as leaders, when you get into politics, it is not an easy game. It is not church business. Even church business can be tough. And I think when we make that decision to get into public service, we must have the balls to stick it out.
Initially, also, we remember the story about that Raila Odinga wanted actually to become senator. There were a number of meetings, flurry of activities. And there are those who are convinced that, in fact, it was him, then making sure that this conversation was happening with some of the pointmen in Homabay, saying that they're the ones urging him to become senator. And, of course, after that idea was brought to the public, the conversation then showed that not many people were for that particular idea. What did you think about it?
If Raila Odinga would have run for senator, he would have won by a bigger majority than I gathered. Number two, any Kenyan... Would
it have been a good fit for him with his history to have vied for senator?
It is on record that I said that Raila Odinga is presidential material, and I would not have wished to see him in the Senate. The truth here is that Raila Odinga had not expressed a desire to run. It was people who around him who had made that proposal. In fact, we spent a lot of time with Raila Odinga during our campaigns, and he kept telling the people that if you want to get into the jungle, what you do, you throw a stone into the bush. When you throw the stone, then you will find out what kind of animals live in the bush. And he said he threw a stone into the bush, and he saw snakes come out. He saw birds, he saw baboons and monkeys. Essentially what he was saying is that when it was floated that he should run for senator, it enabled him to get a good view of the kind of leaders that surrounded him. Because there are those who started insulting him immediately. They heard that there were thoughts of Raila Odinga becoming senator. There are those who supported him blindly. And there are those who objectively and constructively discussed the merits and demerits of his being a senator. Sometimes in political leadership, you have to pull such tests to know what kind of people surround you.
Okay. The chair, again following the demise, remember, of the acting chairperson, ODM in Homabay, is vacant. Who are you supporting for that position?
I've taken a neutral position because all the candidates who are running for chair in Homabay were part of my campaign team. In fact, they were part of the summit of my campaign team. Honorable Gladys Wanga, Honorable Kaluma, Honorable Oyugi Magwanga, all these were very key members of my campaign team. So I have requested them to go and talk to the party executive, and whoever gets endorsed, that would be a good decision for the party. What I believe is that we must strengthen the party in Homabay. We've got a lot of vacancies, well, at least 2 vacancies occasioned by death, and several other vacancies that arose when some members decided to shift their allegiance. We must replace these by people who are party loyalists. But as we do that, I would also want us to encourage non-elected leaders to take on party roles. By non-elected leaders, I mean non-MPs, non-senators, and non-MCAs. I don't think that party management at the county level should be a monopoly of MPs and MCAs and senators. And it is for that reason that I decided that I was not going to run for any position at the party level, because I know there are people who have worked so hard for the party, who have fought for the party for such a long time, and they've never been elected MP or senator or MCA. We must provide these people with the opportunity to run the affairs of the party at the county level.
So Orange Democratic Movement is the biggest party in the country, and its Secretary General, who's also chair of the most powerful opposition-led committee in the National Assembly, finds himself in a fix. What do you make of the Ababu Namwamba PAC wars?
It's unfortunate that we've played it out in the media to the extent that it has gotten. But first of all, I do not condone corruption in whatever form and from whatever origin. We have been told, and I'm not a member of PAC, I'm also not a member of the National Assembly, we have been told that there are significant allegations of financial wrongdoing on the part of the PAC members. I would like these claims to be investigated, and if found to be true, then relevant action should be taken. Irrespective of the perpetrator, whether it is the Secretary General of my party or the chairman of my party, who's also a member of PAC, we must send out a strong message that as a country, it will not be a fair season for people who engage in corruption. Kenyans deserve to be told the truth about some of these allegations. And so, you know, when it now comes out in the media, the next thing is that Kenyans are yearning to know whether their leaders are really involved in this Lungula business or it is all stories.
All right, so they're being investigated, these allegations, but what do you think of the fact that he's talking about this recording where the party leader was present, Raila Odinga? The fact that he recorded a meeting where the party leader was present.
It would be a breach of trust for me to record a conversation with my father or my party leader or my boss or any other person without informing them. If I need to record a conversation with you, I need to inform you that, by the way, I'm recording this conversation. And that is what happens in civilized societies. And even the corporate sector, if you make a call to customer service, they will tell you this call will be recorded for quality assurance purposes. If it is true that my Secretary General recorded a conversation with the Prime Minister without his knowledge, then I think that will be an act of gross misconduct.
And some have said gross misconduct sufficient enough to see him lose his position as Secretary General. Do you agree?
Well, we need to split the two. It is gross misconduct. It is a demonstration of, because it goes into the territory of breach of trust, but we need to ask ourselves whether it is sufficient for him to lose his position. I think that discussion should be handed over to the delegates of the party and to the leadership of the party. Okay. But when you get to the point where you're recording a conversation with your party leader, really it shows the level of distrust that is between you and him. And in a civilized society, when you get to that level of distrust, the best thing is for you to walk. That's why I was talking about this analogy with churches, that you are in the Roman Catholic Church and you are not happy with your Pope. There are so many other options. There are so many other churches. You can even found your own.
Mbadi, the chair, has also been reported as saying that the best way out of this situation, or one of the ways going forward, should be to disband PAC, because surely it cannot continue with just these allegations that has tainted the commission, the committee enough, and that it should be reconstituted. Yes or no to constitution of the committee?
I support that line of thinking, because if you've got a PAC where everyone is accusing each other of financial impropriety, then the best thing to do is to reconstitute a fresh PAC. Yeah. Because PAC is a very powerful body that is in charge of oversight of state institutions. You cannot have a PAC where people are fighting day and night. And it should not just stop at reconstitution. I would want to encourage the people represented by the members who are in this commission, that in this committee, in the event that there is evidence that these guys were bribed, they can initiate a recall process, because it just does not end at reconstitution of PAC. The electorate also has a role to play. They've got a right to recall these guys. Okay. If we continue condoning corruption, then we cannot demand much from the Jubilee administration. We have seen a lot of high-level corruption. Yeah, because then you lose the moral ground to hold them to account if the hunters become the hunted. I agree with that absolutely, because we must be beyond reproach, so that when we are taking on the Jubilee administration over Anglo-leasing and all these other grand corruption cover-ups that we are seeing, then we are speaking from a perspective of our hands being clean. But our hands cannot be tainted, and we continue holding the Jubilee government to task. The key thing, if we can reconstitute PAC, If that is within the standing orders of the National Assembly, let's do it. We probably will not get angels to set up another park, but let us make the effort to give a fresh face to the committee that is concerned with fighting impunity and oversighting state institutions.
All right, Betty Murungi is saying his maiden speech in the Senate was brilliant, and she wants us to perhaps discuss your ideas moving forward. The election is done, perhaps exhausted with all the election conversation, but yeah, your ideas going forward, and she's here lauding your maiden speech in the Senate.
Thank you, Betty. The media reported my maiden speech to be the one around Boynet. In real sense, my maiden speech was on the budget policy statement, the 2015 budget policy statement. And if I use that as an anchor for my ideas going forward, I think in Kenya we are not as aggressive and as ambitious as we'd like to be. We talked about Vision 2030 and growing our economy in double digits. And yet, in the budget policy statement, we are still talking of growing at 4-5% and hopefully to 6 or 7% in the next few years.
Yeah.
That is not going to get us to where we want to be. The young people of this country are more exposed than they were 10 years ago. Nowadays, you wake up and you can find out what's happening in New York, what's happening out there in Singapore, in Dubai. And Kenyans have acquired an appetite for that kind of life. So we cannot continue with the mediocre thinking, with the low-level thinking of yesteryears. We would like to see our government and our leaders being a little bit more ambitious in their aspirations for this nation. Now, when it comes to youth and women, the same budget policy statement talked about 1.4 billion shillings of tenders having been awarded to youth, women and persons with disability. And the question is, what percentage of the total pie is 1.4 billion? We said we'd set aside 30% of tenders and jobs to youth and women. We are still struggling with it. There is this conversation about how to bring women into political leadership by a certain date in August. We are only thinking about the political aspect without thinking about the aspect that puts food on the tables of youth, women and persons with disability. We need to go back and make sure that we provide these opportunities. When it comes to being forward-thinking and being aggressive, and this is a statement I made in Senate.
Yes.
We had all this digital migration, hullabaloo. And as an information technology specialist, I think the reasons we gave for the ambush of some June deadline, that argument does not hold water. There was nothing wrong in us seeking an extension and then providing support for local industries. It could be the National Youth Service, it could be the local universities, to manufacture digital set-top boxes. A digital set-top box is an extremely basic device, which our youth, if they are putting together speed governors, our youth can also put them together. And that can provide at least 5,000 jobs out of the 1 million jobs that the Jubilee administration had promised. I think we need to think outside the box. It cannot be business as usual for this country. All
right, well, we'll end it there. Oh, but before we go, I must ask this. 2017, seek re-election, Homabay senatorial seat, or will you be aiming higher?
In 2017, I am very confident that my party and coalition will be in State House. That will change the dynamics, but the people of Homabay will advise me what role they would like me to serve them in.
Yeah, but politics, you intend at least, will you offer yourself? You know, they also need you to perhaps indicate you're willing. Before then they say, okay, we're with you.
My sacrifice and you know, my giving myself up to the people of Homabay is unconditional, and I am at their service. My focus now is to serve them effectively as a senator by legislating properly, by oversighting, and by playing a role in the revival of industries and empowerment of women and youth and persons with disability within Homabay County. When it comes to 2017, I believe that we'll be crafting new alliances, but
new alliances?
We will also be in State House. So that could herald a lot of things to come.
A lot of things to come. Well, we'll be watching. We wish you the very best.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Moses Kajwang, Homabay Senator, with us this morning on the Person of Interest.